look at this keyboard. Is it not the most delightfully 90s thing you've ever seen? The beige mixed with those Easter eggshell colored keycaps, those rounded blue-violet function keys, and of course the built-in trackball. It is such a dense encapsulation of the 90s, not to mention the White Alps clicky mechanical key switches. I'm just highly amused by this keyboard's existence, and if that's all I had to say, then this would probably just be an LGR Blurbs video, but no, this is a full LGR episode. Greetings, by the way. I've got to talk about these keyboards from DataDesk, because I have been going down some rabbit holes and side excursions in research that I just, sometimes I gotta get these things out of my mind onto paper and then into a video and share a story about some products I don't think too many people know about. For instance, look at this. This looks like the keyboard I just showed, but look again. It's not what it first appears. Without any kind of context for size, you may not realize this thing is as small as it is, but getting ahead of myself in this story, let's go back to 2024 and the Vintage Computer Festival Southwest show in Texas. A wonderful VCF show that was my first time visiting. Was just looking around at all the awesome tables as seen in this LGR Blurbs vlog thing that I did, and I saw this wonderful exhibit with a Mystic Macintosh Color Classic. Awesome enough on its own, but it was the keyboard that really got my attention. I had never seen one of these. It was really cool looking, but then I tried it and felt those switches. That's wild. Oh man, clicky, what is this? Whoa. What kind of switchers are these?
It's weird for me. I've not taken them apart to check.
I'm gonna have to look that up. Yep, I had to have one, so I went onto eBay and put in a saved search then and there for the TK3000 by DataDesk. And almost exactly a year later, one of them finally showed up on eBay for a decent price, so I bought it immediately. Then once it showed up, I was surprised to see that it was actually a PS2 keyboard for the PC. I hadn't done any research on it, I just assumed it was only made for Apple ADB connections, but wait a second. This also has ADB on the left-hand side. Okay, so what is this on the right-hand side? It's an 8-pin mini DIN connector, and what plugs in there is this keyboard cable with two PS2 connectors split on the end, which in itself is a little bit odd. Like a PS2 splitter you'd normally see is also PS2, where it plugs in, but not here. And that's when I noticed the model name here is actually PC3000. I guess the seller mistook the FCC ID for the original TK3000, and to be honest, it is a little bit confusing, and I didn't look very closely at the listing, so that's on me. So I brought this up to some fellow retro computing YouTubers, and my buddy Steve of Mac84 chimed in, saying that it looked familiar. He had a board that kind of looked like it, but probably way smaller. Then once he sent me this photo, I just knew I had to know more, and kindly he loaned me that model for this video, so thank you, Steve. And yeah, we're gonna test both of these odd boards on a PC with some typing and game tests and whatnot, but before we get to that, let me just tell you all about DataDesk, because they are a surprisingly fascinating keyboard company. In fact, they have to be one of the very first third-party companies developing specialized enthusiast-level mechanical keyboards for the PC, right up there with the likes of Cherry and Keytronic. And back in their early days, they were known as DataDesk International. It later became DataDesk Technologies, like by the time they were making the keyboards that I have, but that's only when they moved to Bainbridge Island, Washington in the 90s. Originally, though, they were founded by Mr. Robert Solomon in Van Nuys, California in 1985. In this building right here, by the way, now the M&M Scrubs uniform store. Yeah, if you ever picked up your Scrubs there, well, DataDesk used to be there making mechanical keyboards, and their first product was their IBM PC-compatible keyboard in 1985, with the idea here to provide either an alternative to IBM's keyboards or, more likely, something that was nice for your clone computer. Yeah, IBM didn't sell their Model M's and F's separately, so it wasn't the most feasible to get one of those for your clone, and the boards that were out there by the likes of Keytronic were more mushy, whereas the DataDesk was nice and clicky without being as loud as IBM buckling springs. It apparently sold quite well, but DataDesk seemed to do even better with the Mac 101. Basically the same keyboard, but for Macintosh computers, giving PC users more comfort with a familiar layout. Reportedly was developed in conjunction with Microsoft for their Mac version of Word, apparently also used by Bill Gates himself to demonstrate that program. As stated on the old DataDesk website anyway. And you know what? They list all kinds of different firsts that they claim to be the first at, like the first cross-platform user-configurable keyboard supporting both Mac and PC, the Switchboard. And this thing is crazy. The thing with this is that it was not only both platforms, but you could physically rearrange the layout of the keyboard itself by plugging and unplugging components, something demonstrated in this older video by Thomas of Kairos Ran. Check that out. It is a fascinating keyboard. I would love to find one of those. And speaking of the DataDesk website, it is still online at datadesktech.com. Very early 2000s, late 90s. Though it's not their original website. That was datadesk1.com, and you can browse that on Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. But yeah, suffice it to say that we're making all kinds of Macintosh products, and many of them had PC compatibility either as an option or completely built in. And that brings us to the board that kicked this whole thing off for me, which is known as the Trackboard, the TK3000 as it was known for the Macintosh. Now, originally it was ADB only as far as I can tell, and at that point they actually offered it with a separate numpad, which makes sense. You could daisy chain ADB devices to each other like that. Though it wasn't long before they offered a PS2 version of the Trackboard, and then a version 2 of the Trackboard that supported both ADB and PS2 in the same unit, and then they moved on to just selling it as a USB keyboard for the iMac G3 and PCs onward. And yeah, it's that combined PS2/ADB version 2 that I have, and that also explains why the trackball area and the buttons look different from the one that I originally saw at VCF Southwest. If you look at things side by side, even though mine's missing the plastic surrounding the trackball, the overall design is totally different. And you know, DataDesk, it seems they could not stop reiterating this thing. They also came out with the Touchboard version, which had a touchpad in lieu of a trackball. Then sometime after that, they came out with the Lil Big Board, which seems to be just the same thing again, just with that separate numpad now built in, taking place of the mouse. And finally, that brings us to what is probably going to be the focus of a lot of the rest of this video, the Little Fingers. Yes, that's what it's called. No, not Lord Baelish. Little Fingers, plural. A heck of a name for a product. Yes, the Little Fingers, as you might expect, is a kid-focused, child-friendly keyboard in size, mainly, as opposed to some other kids' keyboards I've covered in the past, which have weird layouts and a bunch of colors, or they're even bigger, or they're peanut butter proof, or whatever. Now this one, the whole idea is that it is just a normal-looking keyboard shrunken down, because, as the ads put it, size does matter. Yeah, seriously, that's what they went with for the marketing tagline for this thing on their website, in advertising, on these postcards. Anyway, the Little Fingers Size Does Matter keyboard definitely got more attention from the press compared to their previous keyboards, including some fascinating history, which apparently went back all the way to 1993, and how its creator Dennis Nusser tried unsuccessfully for years to get some company to bring his Little Fingers to market, being turned down by 262 different companies by 1997. Let me reiterate that. 262 people or businesses said no for almost 4 years. And yeah, I looked up the patents, and Mr. Nusser did start the process in 1993. I mean, you gotta admire the persistence and belief in your vision, I suppose. And it paid off, DataDesk being the company that took on the idea and brought it to the public, showing off the first prototype in March 1998 at the National Inventors Expo at Walt Disney World's Epcot Center, alongside other innovations like the light-up nut driver and corn in a bag, though it was the Little Fingers that caught more national press, with the idea being that children younger and younger were being taught keyboarding and touch typing all the time throughout the 90s, but the size didn't match, with quotes like, "You don't put adult shoes on kids, you buy them special shoes," or "In schools you have children's chairs." Well, that's the same with the keyboards. And it's like shoes and socks and bikes and everything else. Everyone's different sizes. I guess size does matter. That should be the tagline. Anyway, it ended up in all kinds of major retailers, Radio Shack, CompUSA, Toys R Us, etc., and teachers and students alike seemed to enjoy it, judging by the testing results being overall quite positive from these schools that were putting it through its paces. And we'll do some of our own testing here pretty soon, but one other loose end that I wanted to look into is whatever happened to the guys behind it, Mr. Nusser, the inventor, and Mr. Solomon, the data desk guy. Well, unfortunately, Dennis Nusser passed away in 2013 at just 67 years old after battling pulmonary fibrosis, and it seems the Littlefingers keyboard was his main contribution to computers, otherwise owning the Ladybug pest control company with his wife Peg for almost 40 years, and enjoying being on the water quite a bit around his home in Florida, being a member of the Fort Lauderdale Marine Advisory Board. And as for Robert Solomon, the founder of DataDesk, well, he continued doing keyboards. After his DataDesk days, the main thing he's known for doing is going on to co-found Solo Matrix with his son Cody, where they came up with, patented, and marketed this idea for an iPhone keyboard case. And this became known as the Solo Matrix Spike, a project they managed to kickstart in 2012. With the idea being that you could BlackBerryfy your iPhone, as some in the press put it, by installing a case with a built-in keyboard so you could get QWERTY input through real buttons. An idea that has certainly come and gone over the years in various different forms and levels of success, obscurity, and availability. But we're not here to talk about phone case keyboards, we're here to talk about the DataDesk. Both of them. As far as I can tell, the Littlefingers pretty much cost $70 as its suggested price, and this one was between $100 and $129, yeah, whatever. Some of the ads I also saw went down to like $80. But yeah, affordable enough considering you're paying for a multi-system thing. You got a built-in trackball and a really nice clicky keyboard. Even the function keys are clicky with those white Alps SKCM clicky switches. Yeah, I mean, if you were buying these peripherals separately, you'd probably be paying more than that back in the day, or at least close to it. By the way, it's only the larger trackboard that has these delightful Alps white SKCMs. A very popular but lovely Alps switch, and not to be confused with the ivory one, which doesn't have that kind of harsh click to it. I like the click though. And then this one here, its key puller it's too big. Everything is smaller. The space between the keys, the keycaps themselves, it's so shrunken. Okay. Well, I don't really know what that is. Look at that. Some kind of slider over rubber dome, I presume. Though still with the Alps kind of connector there. Either way, it's not really bad. Actually, from what I can tell, quite nice for domes, presumably. But, you know, obviously I can't really give it a fair shot. My fingers are like 3 times oversized. I really need some little fingers of my own, you know? So it's like, yeah, if you had fingers about that size, it would kind of do the trick. I could see how this would be quite handy as a little fingered individual. I also like the touch of the lowercase and uppercase letters, with the lowercase kind of being the primary legend on the keycaps. Educational things. Yeah, I find the approach of these two different models quite intriguing in the way they approach the whole multi-system, multi-platform issue. They both came with split PS2 cables, and they each have that 8-pin connector, which is actually, I think, the same type of mini DIN as Apple Serial. Or I've also seen it on like subwoofer connectors. Yeah, the way it connects though to the actual keyboard is quite a bit different between the two. So where mine just has the 8-pin connector right there for the one cable, this has multiple connectors and pass-throughs and everything, and that kind of makes sense for what they were trying to do. So you have ADB here. You can switch between Mac or PC mode, but you also have ADB over here, another Mac PC switch plus PC keyboard out for the 8-pin, and then PS2 PC keyboard in. Whereas mine here just has, well, there goes my ball. Anyway, yeah, it just has the one ADB on this side. And so the idea here with this kid's keyboard is that you could have your normal adult keyboard plugged in as well. So an external ADB keyboard you'd plug in here, external PS2 over here, and then that is that 8-pin thing for the actual cable to connect it to a computer, which in both of these cases is PS2. I don't know if there was ever a version of this 8-pin cable with ADB on the end instead of PS2, or whether it was simply used with the ADB ports on the keyboard if you want to connect it to a Mac. I don't have my classic Macs accessible at the moment to try, nor do I have a manual. DataDesk actually still hosts manuals, but not this version 2 board that I have here with these different connectors. Yeah, you can see why this is so easy to lose. Unfortunately, this plastic surround on mine is missing. It was on there on the auction when I bought it on eBay. It went missing somewhere along the way. Not really surprising. It's made of that 90s beige plastic that just tends to fall apart, and of course, this one did. You do get nice clicky buttons on each one. I do quite like this one a little bit better, but they're both nice. And the trackballs pretty much feel the same. I wonder which one of our balls are bigger. I don't know. Mine and Steve's balls might be identical. Yeah, it looks like 35 millimeter diameter on this one. Yeah, it's right at 35 for both balls. So we have a nice 70 mils of combined ball. Really, the only other main difference we have going on here are the legends on the keys. The little fingers has more little labels. So we've got Apple, but also Option on the Windows key, and Alt has Command key, and so on. Plus going all the way up to F15 with the function keys, although the trackboard does that as well. It's just that they're labeled print screen, scroll lock, and pause. And of course, being a Mac thing, we have this power button here, presumably doing nothing on a PC. Speaking of not doing anything on a PC, let's fix that. Plug these into a PC and finally finger our trackballs with some PC software and see how they perform. Gotta say, it is quite the space-saving effect that this thing has on this normal setup here, not having a mouse or the gigantic Model M I normally have going on there. And this is just the trackboard. This is not even the little fingers, which is even smaller in terms of width. But yeah, trackboard functionality. It is, unfortunately, not so great when it comes to the trackball itself. Keyboard is fine, it's just that sort of slightly odd layout here for things like the arrow keys. I don't like that on any keyboard. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with the trackball. I've cleaned it, I've messed around with the different little bits in here in terms of what I can reach. It's the left and right almost doesn't work at all. Up and down mostly does, but the trackball is just barely doing what it should. And that may have to do with the surround being not here. I wish this other one fit, but it's got that broken clip, and even if it did, it doesn't actually fit on there. It's a slightly different size, it seems, which is strange because we've measured the balls. Balls are the same. Not the entire appeal though. Most of it really is this wonderful Alps board. Well, spacebar. This has more issues than I thought it did. From what I've heard too, these SKCM whites have a tendency to get a little sticky, a little bit and need some cleaning or degunking or something. Like this feels stickier than it should be and it doesn't click. Let's try the little keys. Ah, dang, same issue too. Left and right, it doesn't even work at all on this one. Well, maybe it's the actual little, okay, so yeah, it does have these little metal pieces in there. It looks like the left and right one just fell off its little, yeah, there we go. Yeah, that works perfect. So, good deal, even without the surround. So I'm thinking maybe if I just clean up the other one, or I don't know, figure out if there's something going on with the sensor there. Yeah, either way, this is working wonderfully. All right, so we have our mouse buttons here, just the bottom one being your standard left click. That one top right is right click, and then this one here is just sort of holding down the left mouse button, I guess, to more easily select things. So it's sort of a select click. In terms of the overall accuracy, I mean, it's fine for normal usage, probably not gonna be the best for drawing just from what I'm seeing. I don't know what kind of polling rate it has. Like, see, that's supposed to be circles, but it just ends up sort of like squared off circles. I don't know. I mean, it's okay, but definitely not the best I've come across. And then for, drawing things, I mean, it's, yeah. I mean, I can get more used to it, but definitely not my preferred size or layout for trackball with the button and everything. It's so cramped over here. I mean, it's cramped even on this one. This one would be a little bit better, but you know, the little keyboard is, it's little. Another little oddity I noticed, like I wanted to close down this here and gotta Control-Alt-Delete to do that. Well, where is my delete? I mean, this says delete, but that's gotta be backspace because just the kind of layout this is, and the Mac stuff, whatever. So, okay, we have this other delete down here, but that's a slash, so obviously it's maybe like a function thing. Well, here's the function shift, and no, that just does that. Well, here's the thing, look at this. The function button for shift on right shift is a toggle. So in order to do something like Control-Alt-Delete, this is where the delete key is, I have to not press Control-Alt first because that'll turn off the function. No, you have to like do Control-Alt or hold those, then function, then delete. It's just a little odd. Well, since we're here, let's do a little typing test. And I don't type normally anyway, but even if I did with all the home keys and stuff, the layout is just too cramped for me to do that. So I'm just gonna do my best here. Oh. I mean, it's tolerable. Just not going to be breaking any speed records as an adult. However, with some little fingers, I'm sure it's probably a little bit better. Like, those are really kind of the ideal finger size. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Honestly, I don't really see much fault with this. It's got some quirks and oddities to it for sure. But for the idea, this seems kind of like a good idea to me. I mean, obviously kids are gonna outgrow it at some point. Like at what age or size do you go from the little fingers to the normal fingers? Personally, I never had a problem using a computer, learning to type, doing anything I needed to do with a normal keyboard growing up in the 90s. That being said, how does it game? Well, nobody asked, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Well, it's immediately not that bad. Yeah, dude. Gaming with the little fingers. Never thought I'd see the day. I always like when 90s racing games included mouse support like this. It's not that bad. Microsoft games were some of the few to do it pretty well. Yeah. We gotta do it. Yay. Alright, I changed operating systems because I wanted to play Quake 2 and the other one wasn't letting me. Don't know why. I mean, trackball's never been my preferred way to play FPS, but it's certainly doable. And this one, again, is not that bad. Wonderful. Now can I play with the little fingers? Well, I mean, you know, I'm not dead yet. That went on longer than I thought it would. Honestly, I think that games that rely on the arrow keys might trip me up even more, just because of the odd layout over here. I don't know what I'm used to. Yeah, like down, I immediately went to be left, and then this one here is left instead of down. But this is mostly like a sort of left and right type of game, although I say that as I immediately need to press down. Oh, jeez. Transform! Yeah, like that. Oh, dang it. Yeah, I was trying to press right, and I was pressing down. It's such an old school way to lay out the arrow keys, like 8-bit micro kind of stuff. Why would they do this in like 1999 in this case? Kind of nuts. Die. You know what? I mean, I really can't fault this for too much at all. It is what it is. It's a weird little kid's learning keyboard. And honestly, it's a pretty well made one. It's just smaller. Sure, it's got some oddities in terms of the cramped arrow keys and the weird functions stuff, and I don't know, layout's a little odd, but yeah, like, for what it is, it's not bad. And kind of charming, enjoyable to just use. Something different from the norm, you know? And like, I think this one definitely would be too. I wish it was fully working. I'll try to get it working for sure. The spacebar mainly, and the trackball should be able, I don't know, hopefully not a huge deal to try and fix, because it seems like it'd be quite an enjoyable thing to use, right? On different late 90s systems in particular, Macs and PCs alike. It's just, it's got an aesthetic to it. And for what it is, it's really well made, especially this one with the Alps white switches. Those are nice. It's a shame they're taking this game off the internet, or at least off of Steam, it looks like. It's delisting Leisure Suit Larry games. I don't know why, but something I saw in the news the other day, and I was like, yeah, I should play a little bit of something that again when I'm testing out this keyboard, and here we are. Anyway, thanks again to Steve of Mac84 for sending over the little fingers. If not, we wouldn't have had too much to show here, but yeah, I hope that you enjoyed seeing what we just showed. Let me know if you had one of these Data Desk keyboards back in the day, or if you've learned on the little fingers, definitely let me know. That would be fascinating to hear some first-hand experience of what it was actually meant to do. And yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, you know, going down rabbit holes and weird 90s computer history, then do stick around. There are always more things like this here in the works on LGR. And as always, thank you very much for watching.